Everyone was laughing at my graduation dinner, glasses clinking my mother's rehearsed smile, my father pretending to be proud. I was still smoothing the crease of my gown when Grandma Evelyn leaned in, her voice warm and oblivious to the grenade she was about to drop. "I'm glad the 1,500 I send you each month is helping." The room didn't go silent. It collapsed. I froze, looked around, and felt something cold rise in my chest. "I never got any money," I said. Chairs shifted. Every head turned toward my parents. Neither of them moved. Grandma set her plate down, and the air snapped tight around us. I wish I could tell you that moment at the dinner table was the first time something felt off. But the truth is, I'd spent most of my life brushing off the quiet warnings that came in small, ordinary shapes. A missing 20 from my birthday card. A college bill that didn't match the scholarship amount I knew I'd earned. The way my mother's voice always seemed to crack at the perfect moment, as if emotion were a faucet she could turn on and off. My name is Marie, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the kind of person who apologizes before I speak. Growing up, I learned early that needing anything was a burden. New shoes too expensive? Field trip, we can't afford that. Even in high school, when I worked weekends at a small cafe and came home smelling like burnt espresso, the money disappeared into what my father always called family expenses. I didn't question it. I thought I was helping. By the time I entered college, I'd mastered the art of surviving on almost nothing. Granola bars for dinner, 2 part-time jobs stacked on top of a full course load. Long nights in the campus library because the heat in my apartment barely worked and I couldn't afford to fix it. And through it all, my parents reminded me constantly how proud they were that I understood the meaning of sacrifice. I wore that word like a badge even when it felt more like a weight around my neck. My mother, Diane, played her part well. She had this soft, trembling way of telling me how guilty she felt that she couldn't give me more. "We're trying, sweetheart," she'd whisper, eyes shining with practiced tears. My father, Victor, balanced her theatrics with cold practicality. "Money's tight," he'd say. "Be grateful we're keeping you in school at all." I believed them. Why wouldn't I? The only person who ever made me feel safe was Grandma Evelyn. She lived in a different city far enough that visits were rare. When she came, she'd hold on to me like she was trying to memorize the shape of my ribs. But whenever she suggested spending more time together, my mother would step in with a smile that never touched her eyes. "Marie's overwhelmed with school. We don't want her falling behind." Evelyn never pushed. I never questioned it. But looking back, I can see the pattern. Every wall I ran into had my parents' fingerprints on it. And that night, sitting between the people I trusted least and the one person who'd always loved me honestly, I realized this wasn't the start of a mystery. It was the end of my ignorance. We didn't leave the table right away. For a few suspended seconds, we all just sat there caught in the gravity of Evelyn's sentence and my reply. The dining room warm a moment earlier felt suddenly sharp, the way air feels right before a glass slips off the counter. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the chatter that had filled the room minutes before. Grandma's hand stilled halfway toward her water glass. She didn't look confused. She looked alerted. Like something that had lived in the back of her mind for years had finally stepped into the light. Her fingers tightened slightly, then she set her plate down with a soft, deliberate click that echoed louder than it should have. Across the table, Harper's eyes flicked from my face to my parents. She wasn't smiling anymore. Samuel leaned back slowly, studying Victor like he already knew where this was going. My parents didn't speak. Diane's smile stayed frozen in place, too. Perfect, too stretched like wax melting at the edges. Victor's jaw clenched once a tiny movement, but enough to tell me he was calculating every possible exit. "Marie." My mother finally whispered, voice high and brittle. "Sweetheart, I think you misunderstood." But Evelyn cut her off. "No," she said quietly. She didn't misunderstand anything. My father cleared his throat, a sound that tried to reclaim authority but failed. "This isn't the time for confusion," he said, glancing at the guests with forced composure. "Let's discuss it later." "No," Evelyn repeated, sharper now. "We'll discuss it now." Her gaze shifted to me. "When was the last time you checked your account?" Dear heat flushed up the back of my neck. I swallowed. I don't have any transfers, not a single one. The sound that left Evelyn wasn't surprise. It was resignation, a soft, wounded exhale like a truth she'd hoped she was wrong about but had known for too long. Diane stood abruptly, napkin crumpling in her hand. Mother, please, this is embarrassing. For who? Samuel asked quietly. His voice sliced through the room. I watched my mother's face collapse into the expression she'd perfected over years, the trembling lips, the sad eyes, the silent plea for mercy. The performance she always used when the walls came too close. But no one rushed to comfort her, not this time. As guests awkwardly excused themselves, the room emptied in slow-motion ripples. The moment the front door closed behind the last person, Victor turned to me. "We'll handle this privately," he said, tone flat with warning. But something in me had already shifted. Privately, I murmured, "You mean like you handled the money?" My mother flinched. My father's eyes sharpened. That was when my phone buzzed. A text from Harper. "Call me tonight. I know more than you think." My stomach dropped. Later, alone in my childhood room, the ceiling felt lower, the air too still. I replayed every moment I'd ever dismissed, the guilt trips, the missing money, the constant narrative of sacrifice, and beneath it all, a pattern finally aligned. When I called Harper, her voice came through steady and tired. "They did it to me too," she said, "and to others. You're not imagining this." Silence stretched long between us, then snapped. That was the moment I understood this wasn't a mistake. It was a system, and it had been built around me my entire life. I barely slept. By morning, my pillow was still damp at the edges, and my throat felt scraped raw from holding back everything I hadn't had the courage to say the night before. The house was silent when I slipped out, sunlight barely touching the blinds, as if even the day didn't want to disturb whatever poison lingered inside those walls. Grandma Evelyn was already waiting at the small hotel where she was staying for the weekend. She opened her door before I could even knock twice. One look at my face, and she reached for me with both hands. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. Every missing paycheck, every scholarship that mysteriously never made it to me, every bill I'd paid alone, while believing we were barely staying afloat as a family. I told her about the 2 jobs I'd juggled the nights I'd gone hungry because textbooks cost more than food, and how my parents praised me for being understanding. Evelyn listened, jaw-tightening, eyes glistening, not with shock but with confirmation. "I kept records," she said, finally rising from the couch with a steadiness that made her seem decades younger. She opened her travel bag and pulled out a slim folder. "Transfers, amounts, dates. Every payment I sent you." Inside were neatly organized statements, each line a cut straight through my childhood narrative. 4 years of monthly transfers. Notes she'd written on the sides, reminding herself why she sent extra some months, because I'd sounded tired on the phone, because finals were approaching, because she didn't want me to struggle. But I had struggled. Hard. My hands shook. "Where did it go?" "You know where," she said softly. I did. I checked my own accounts next. No transfers. Not one. I called the bank hoping for some explanation that didn't make me sick, but the representative hesitated before speaking. "There is a joint account under your name, opened when you were 17. It lists Diane as the primary." My stomach flipped. I had never signed anything at 17, not for a joint account. By early afternoon, I was sitting in a downtown cafe with Harper, who slid into the booth across from me with a look that told me she'd been waiting years for someone else to see the truth. "They did the same thing with my trust," she said. "Told everyone I was irresponsible. Meanwhile, the money just vanished." Her words tugged at a thread in my memory, and suddenly a flood of forgotten moments came crashing back. My father dismissing Samuel as jealous, my mother insisting certain relatives were bad influences, the careful cage built around my life, one excuse at a time. "They isolated us," I whispered. "That's what people like them do," Harper said. When I told my boyfriend Ryan everything that night, he rubbed his forehead and sighed. "I don't know, Marie. Maybe you're overreacting. Money stuff gets messy." It wasn't the wrong answer. It was simply the final straw. By morning, I was sitting across from attorney Alden Evelyn beside me, her hands clasped in quiet fury. "This isn't just financial mismanagement," Alden said after reviewing the folder. "This is financial abuse and fraud." I felt something settle inside me, not rage, not grief, purpose. "We can move forward," he said, sliding a notepad toward me. "But it has to start with intent." I nodded, the decision already made. "I'm ready." The cafe we picked sat in a quiet corner of the city, the kind of place with warm bulbs hanging from the ceiling and the smell of roasted beans drifting in slow waves. It should have felt comforting. It didn't. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I wrapped them around a mug I hadn't taken a single sip from. Evelyn sat beside me, calm in a way only someone who had already walked through fire could be. Samuel arrived next and nodding to both of us before taking the seat across from me. The empty chair beside him waited like an open wound. "They'll come," he said. "People like them always think they can control the ending." He wasn't wrong. Victor and Diane walked in 10 minutes later, dressed like they were attending a meeting they expected to win. My mother scanned the cafe, eyes wide and pleading, as if hoping this was all some kind of misunderstanding. My father walked like the floor belonged to him. They stopped short when they saw who was waiting. Mother Diane breathed, voice breaking on command. "Marie, sweetheart, why are we doing this here? Because here?" Evelyn said quietly, "You won't be able to twist the truth." Victor's jaw pulsed. "Let's sit." They took their seats. The moment Diane's purse touched the floor, I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and placed it face up on the table. "Recording," I said. Diane's mouth opened. "Marie, how could you?" "It's for clarity," I said. "No more confusion." Victor leaned forward. "You're acting impulsively. We can talk about the money. There were reasons." "Good," I said, interrupting. "Let's talk." I slid Evelyn's folder across the table. Victor hesitated before opening it. His expression didn't change, but his fingers stilled. "These are transfers," I said. 4 years' worth. "And the bank says I never received a single one." My mother blinked rapidly, shifting into the persona she'd perfected, soft voice, trembling chin, a martyr sculpted out of guilt. "We were going to give it to you after school," she whispered. "As a surprise. We only wanted to protect you. You were so young. You forged her signature." Evelyn said each word a deliberate cut. "On an account she never opened." "You stole from your own child." Diane's tears vanished. "Forged. That's absurd. I confirmed it with the bank," I said, my voice steady, though a tremor crawled up my spine. "I wasn't even 18 when that account was created." Victor closed the folder. "There were expenses, family expenses. You don't understand the weight of financial responsibility." I almost laughed. I worked double shifts to keep my heat on. He didn't blink. "They took from me too," Harper's voice said suddenly behind me. She stepped out from a corner booth where she'd been waiting as planned. She walked to our table with steps that didn't waver even once. "My trust fund gone. My parents told me I must have mismanaged it. I believed them. Turns out the transfers went straight to accounts tied to Victor." My father's shoulders stiffened to tell he'd spent years hiding. "Lies," he said. "Families help each other. Money is shared. That's not sharing," Samuel snapped. "And you know it. You did it to our parents too." I just didn't have the proof back then. The cafe had gone eerily silent. The low hum of conversation faded as people turned just slightly. Not enough to be rude, but enough to sense a story unfolding. Victor looked around, realizing the room wasn't on his side. "This is a private matter," he hissed. "No," I said. "Private matters don't involve stolen money and forged documents." Diane reached for my hand across the table, her voice breaking perfectly. "We were overwhelmed. You don't understand how hard it's been for us. We had no choice." I pulled my hand back. "You always had a choice," I said. "You just didn't pick me." Evelyn stood. Her presence changed the room. Even Victor leaned back. "I have spent years trying to believe the best of you," she said softly, directed at Diane. "I told myself you were struggling. I told myself you cared. I told myself you loved your daughter the way she deserves." A beat of silence. "And I was a fool." Diane's breath hitched as Evelyn continued. "You manipulated her. You isolated her. You starved her dreams to feed your pride. "And I'm done apologizing for you." Victor scoffed. "Mother, please. This performance." But he stopped when Attorney Alden approached the table. Diane paled. Victor's eyes narrowed into something sharp and defensive. Alden placed a sealed envelope in front of them. "Notice of intent," he said. "Financial fraud, forgery, conversion of funds. We'll begin formal proceedings immediately." Diane shook her head violently. "No, no, you can't do this." "Marie, please. Marie, don't let them do this. We're family." "You made me feel like a burden," I said quietly. "You built an entire world where everything I touched was too expensive, too much, too selfish." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You didn't protect me. You just hid what you were doing." Victor slammed his palm against the table, voice cracking with something I had never heard from him: fear. "You don't know what you're doing." Alden didn't flinch. Actually, she does. The confrontation didn't end with yelling or chaos. It ended with stillness. A heavy, inevitable stillness as Victor and Diane realized the ground beneath them wasn't cracking. It was gone. The courthouse hallway 2 weeks later felt colder than I expected. Evelyn stood beside me, her hand slipping into mine. Samuel sat on a bench, Harper at the far end, her knee bouncing nervously. When the judge called our case, Victor and Diane walked in looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. Diane's eyes were swollen. Victor's suit hung looser, like he'd aged a decade in days. But their expressions changed when they saw the evidence: Evelyn's records, the bank confirmation, Harper's statement, Samuel's testimony, the signed account paperwork with a signature that wasn't mine. The judge asked if I wanted to speak. I didn't expect my legs to move. They did. I told the truth. About the nights I'd gone hungry. About the years of being told we were barely making it. About the guilt I carried for simply existing. I told her about the stolen money, but more than that, I told her about the stolen trust. The courtroom didn't breathe. When I finished, the judge nodded once. "Discovery will proceed. A forensic accounting is ordered." Victor dropped his gaze. Diane wept behind her hands. Their world was no longer in their control. When we walked out of the courtroom, sunlight hit my face so brightly it felt like a blessing. Evelyn wrapped an arm around me. "Justice isn't loud," she murmured. "It's steady." And for the first time in my life, I felt steady too. The settlement came quietly, almost anticlimactic, after months of unraveling everything I thought I knew. Victor and Diane agreed to repay the full amount plus damages once the forensic accounting confirmed the truth they could no longer outrun. My father faced separate investigations at his workplace, and for the first time his confidence cracked in a way that didn't give me satisfaction, just closure. I moved into a small apartment overlooking the city, the first place that felt entirely mine. Some nights I'd catch myself waiting for guilt to creep in, the old instinct to apologize for wanting space, for wanting peace. But it didn't come. Evelyn visited often. We planted herbs on my windowsill, made tea in the evenings, and talked about the scholarship fund we would build, the one that would keep another student from falling through the same cracks I did. Harper and Samuel became constants too. A small, unexpected circle formed around me, one built on honesty, not obligation. The past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined me. I'd taken my life back. Looking back, that graduation dinner didn't break my family, it revealed what was already broken. And in the space that truth created, I built something new. Not perfect, not painless, but real. A life where help isn't a weapon, love isn't conditional, and my worth isn't measured by what I can sacrifice. If you've ever had to protect yourself from the people who were supposed to care for you, I hope my story reminds you of this. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose peace. And if this story stayed with you, share it, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe for more true family stories. You're not alone, not anymore.